morning. My name is David Hill. I'm the executive pastor at Family Life Church. And I just want to give you a quick recap of what we talked about this week. So we started a series called Courage. And with courage, what we are looking at is 3 different areas where we can have supernatural courage and live a life that is beyond fear, where we're actually living and we're walking in what God has called for us. So today we started out with a great series and great sermon about how we can have courage over anxiety and how we're going to be able to defeat anxiety. Because if you look in our culture, there is an epidemic, really, when it comes to anxiety. 1 out of every 5 Americans deal with some kind of anxiety disorder. And that's not the way God meant for us to live. And so the Bible actually talks a lot about this. And we looked at, in our lives, there's really, I think, 2 main things that tend to bring out fear and anxiety in our lives. For one, it's fear of the knowns. Fear of the knowns could be things like you have that boss at work when he walks in, he just fills you with this fright, and inside you just feel uncomfortable because you know it's very domineering. Or it could be your schedule, you know that you have too much to do and not enough time to get it done. So you have these known stressors, these known fears, these known anxieties that you have in your life. But there's also a lot of unknown fears out there. I think those really weigh down on our hearts. Like, what happens if I die on the way home? Will my family be okay? You know, what will happen if I come down with a sickness? What happens if there's a school shooting at my kid's school? What happens if this? What happens if that? And so we have these things that play in our minds, and it can just fill us with fear. And that's not the way God wants us to live. And really, the devil likes to take those thoughts, and he likes to keep you down where God wants you to step forward and into the best life possible. Jesus said in John 10:10, I have come that you may have life, and life to the fullest. And so we see where God wants us to live a life that's to the fullest, where the devil tries to use our fear and our anxiety to keep us down. And so we looked at 2 truths this morning. For the first truth, we looked at that there will always be unknowns. There will always be things out there that we'll never really be able to grasp. We looked at the writings of Solomon, a man that God just gave supernatural insight into life. And this is what Solomon had to say. He said that God is in charge of everything in the world, both for the wise and for the unwise, for the godly, the ungodly. But even for those who are following God, we still don't know if God will give them favor. And so we see where there will always be unknowns. Even when we're living our lives for God, we still cannot be 100% sure that life is going to go great for us or that God's favor is going to be towards us. And so there will always be unknowns out there. And the sooner we can accept that, the sooner we'll be able to defeat anxiety in our lives. Because once we know the truth, we can live with that truth and use that truth to help us be victorious. So the other truth that we looked at is this. You know, there will always be unknowns out there. God will always be there. And we see where Jesus, before he left earth to go back to heaven, he tells his followers, he tells the church this. He says, you can count on this. I will be with you until the end of time. And when we know that truth and we have that promise instilled in our hearts, it's going to help us to be able to defeat this anxiety that maybe we're in this thing alone. Even though there's things that are unknown in our lives that may scare us, we can rest assured and know that God is with us, the God who knows what's around the corner, the God who has power to change things. He's on our side, and he cares for us. And so with those truths we looked at, well, what are we going to do with these truths? These are great truths to know. But what are we going to do with these? How are we going to defeat anxiety with these? And the first thing we looked at is we're going to be open and we're going to be honest with God. And the way we do that is by spending time in his word and letting his word minister to us, and also spending a daily time in prayer. And besides just spending time in the Bible and spending time in prayer, telling God about our day, we're going to take our faith into our own hands. What we mean by that is we're not going to depend on a pastor for us to be ministered to. We're going to take our faith into our own hands. We're going to take ownership in our faith and initiative, where we're going to go out and maybe find a book that's written by a Christian author that talks about anxiety, because we're just talking, we barely scratched the surface with the sermon, but there's books where people have researched this thing for decades, and they have much better insight and can go to much more depth on this topic. So we're going to be open and honest with God, and we're going to be open and honest with others. And so that's why we're going to be part of a life group. That's why we're going to be in a community of people who are going to help us be the people of God, people who we can trust, and we know they have our best out in mind when they give us critique and when they encourage us. And when we're also open and honest with others, for some of us, it means we're going to go get professional counseling. There's a taboo in the church that if you're a Christian, that you don't need counseling because God is all we need. And the truth is that's not biblical, and it's not practical. And every major church leader that I listened to or read, all of them have had to go to a counselor. It's healthy and it's biblical to do that. So some of you guys may need to go out and seek professional help with your anxiety. But together, with knowing the truth that the unknowns will always be there, and with the truth that God is always there with us, it's going to help us defeat this anxiety. It's going to help us have this trust in God. And when we're open and honest with God, and we're open and honest with others who care for us, we'll be able to go even further to defeat this fear of fear itself, or this fear of anxiety. Next week, we will be talking about the fear of rejection. We'll be looking at how we can defeat the fear of rejection. So we invite you to come with us Sunday at 10 and 11:30 a.m.